Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So the topic for this session is everything brewing, cold and hot. And we have with us to address this session, Mr. Philip Bartelek. Please give a big round of applause as I invite him onto stage. Mr. Philip Bartelek, Arabica and Robusta Q grader, Q instructor, green coffee buyer. So this workshop will explore the different methods of brewing coffee from hot to cold. The intention is to start with a tasting session of homegrown cold brew brands, followed by a workshop on extraction using pressurized methods, manual brewing devices, and immersion in hot, cold, and room temperature water. The idea is also to explore the different cold brewing devices and techniques and discuss the potential risks of the cold brewing method. A very warm welcome to you, sir. So over to Mr. Bartelek.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yes? Thank you very much for having me here. Big thanks to the organizers, sponsors, and volunteers who are here in the back. You don't see them. It's a great event. Great to be here. When I was introduced, I already heard the topic and what I will be covering, and I realized that I'm playing a free bird in here because while I was preparing the presentation, I changed it a little bit, so it will be better serving the purpose. So follow me. We will do the tasting session at the end, but first you have to listen to me. I will try to see if you're on the same page. If you have any questions, please keep them to the end, okay? And then we'll go back. So I was already introduced, so I don't have to introduce myself. I work as a sensory analyst in the company that is producing not only coffee, but we produce 9 groups of products with ice cream, pastries, cakes, cookies, and so on, where I'm actually from, since I was a little kid, I was a taster. So this is my field of expertise, and this is what I want to share with you in my presentation. On the career path, I developed some certificates, some which are allowing me to teach also Q graders, so I'm the Q instructor, very much concentrated nowadays in Robusta, that India is famous for, and I'm looking forward to see more and more of that in the future. So as the topic of the presentation states, it's about brewing, all about brewing. So let's have a little quick review of what the brewing methods are. So I'm starting with a slide where you can see alternative brewing methods. There are many ways to brew coffee. Most popular in the Western world is the one with the use of automatic machine, pressurized machine. I don't know how it is in here. I don't know much about India, but in Europe or US, espresso-based beverages are the mainstream. So everything that is not espresso is called alternative methods. It's kind of a paradox because coffee was discovered in the 11th century while the espresso machine was in 1800 something. So everything should, the espresso machine should be the alternative to all what we know as brewing methods, but whatever. Anyway, what we want to achieve with any of those methods, either the machine or the alternative methods, we want to achieve the coffee extract. So the coffee extraction refers to the process of dissolving and extracting desirable flavors, aromas, oils, and compounds from coffee grounds with the use of water. So it occurs during brewing when water comes into contact with the coffee grounds, allowing the water to dissolve and carry away the soluble components. Soluble, which means that there's a little of the components that are actually dissolving in water. All the rest we know as the waste of the coffee that we put somewhere away. The extraction process is influenced by factors such as water temperature, brewing time, grind size, coffee to water brew ratio, and all this contributes to the final strength of the brewed coffee. But this is not the only way we can enjoy the coffee. There are other ways to enjoy. There are many ways to actually go beyond what we know, beyond the espresso and alternative brewing methods. We all have came across products, food products that are containing coffee, like tiramisu, for example, right? We all know that there's a pastry with coffee inside. Of course, the classical tiramisu would include the espresso, but in pastry field that I'm also working in, we are using different extracts of the coffee. The extract is actually composed out of over 70% of coffee. So if you're familiar with the TDS term, total dissolved solids, which usually is a maximum concentration of 2% in beverages, in espresso, in the paste that we're using in pastry, the TDS is 70. So that's a huge difference. Having a little bit of that paste is actually kicking you harder than 10 espressos. So you can have chocolate filled with such products or such ingredients, and this is the way we enjoy the coffee as well. But also, we have another methods that are becoming more and more popular. The one on the left, you can see these are little capsules. This is a new product. I'm going to promote a little bit the company. I'm sorry for that. It's from US. It's Comitir. And they discovered their way of extracting coffee in a little bit higher concentration and freezing it directly after extracting. So then you can actually use this cartridge of frozen coffee, of a frozen ice cube, and mix it with hot water. And by dissolving the ice, you will create a beverage of a required concentration, tasting like brewed coffee, which is incredible. But you can also use instant coffee. That's why I'm putting here the logo of Indian instant coffee producer that I'm friend with. And you can use instant coffees for any other products, not only brewed, but also use them in the pastry business or other food industries. But there's one common thing with the Comitir and instant is the way how the extract is being possessed. So when you have the extracted coffee and you freeze it, so that's a combination of solids that dissolved in the water, filtered, and then frozen. The process of freeze-dried coffee production, the instant coffee, is very similar, with the only exception is that after freezing of a high concentrated liquid, you will reduce the moisture content to minimum, to zero, almost to zero, by using the pressurized chamber. By this, the only thing that you need to do, you just need to add the water back and then drain the coffee, that's it. So many of those methods, or the extraction methods, I'm just going to quickly recap on what is the extraction. So the coffee brewing is the process of extracting flavors and aromas from coffee grounds to create a flavorful cup of coffee. It typically involves combining hot water, combining hot water with ground coffee beans and allowing them to steep or percolate. Different brewing methods, such as pour-over, French press, espresso, vary in terms of water temperature, brewing time, and grind size. Water to coffee ratio and brewing time affection the final taste. For many or the most of the extraction procedures, you have already available standards by Specialty Coffee Association. So there are standards and guidelines made for coffee brewing with the use of different methods. Most of the common ones can be explored and learned through the SCA skills diploma system that I don't want to compete with, so I'm not going to be boring you with all what they already said. So I'm sending you to the SCA for more knowledge, while I'm going to focus on one that is not really described, which is the cold brew. So I want to focus on this relatively new extracting method, which is gaining a lot of popularity, especially in the countries that are warm, when you want to have something refreshing, something cold to refresh you. But not only warm countries. So the cold brew market grew by more than 26% in 2021 and is projected to reach a value of over 1.3 billion US dollars before 2025. So it's growing exponentially. According to the National Coffee Association, in 2022, the National Coffee Data Trends Specialty Coffee Report, 7% of Americans aged 18 plus drank a cold brew coffee in the past days, and 16% had one in the past week. And that study was done in January in the US. So it's a cold month. We were all surprised with this exponential growth, but I believe that the most surprise was on the faces of people from Starbucks, who actually reported that their sales of the cold coffee is exceeding, is close to 75% of their all beverages. So that tells us something, right, about the cold beverages and about the trends. We all want to follow those trends, not only us, small roasters, but only the big industries. So we also have some big industries following the cold brew trends, like Jägermeister, for example. You probably saw the Jägermeister with cold brew. But we also have a lot of different cold brew functional beverages where the cold brew is the base of the product available. So there's a big temptation to move on and to brew cold and to serve it to our customers. I will explore a little more on what are the risks in the future. So the cold extraction is very similar to what we are doing while cupping. So the cuppers are taking ground coffee, putting hot water. We all have the procedure. We have the standardized procedure for it. So we put ground to the certain degree, and then the water of a certain temperature, we put in a certain ratio in the cups, the picture on the right. But cold brew, like the most simple cold brew, is very similar because the only difference is the temperature. The results are also different, but the methods of steeping coffee, or as you could call it, immersion brewing, is similar. Coffee grounds are steeped in the water for a certain period of time to extract the flavors and compounds. It can be done manually, like here, or with the use of various machines. And there are few machines available on the market for doing that. And this is the most hype, trendy 3 machines only, unfortunately. As you know, there's so many espresso machines and the variety is huge. For the cold brewing, there's only these 3. So Toddy as the first one, which was actually the pioneer of this trend of cold brewing. It's a big bucket that allows to filter the coffee. It requires 12 to 24 hours for the extraction. The second one, the one in the middle, is Marco Cold Brew. Marco is famous for the pour-over machines all over the world. It's an Irish company that created a machine that is allowing us to brew cold beverage within 3 hours to the TDS of 4%. So it's a higher extraction than the espresso. And the last one, the one on the right, is the most advanced in this section. It's called Hard Tank. It's made by a Polish company where I was having a pleasure of participating as one of the inventors of this concept, although I left it, so I'm not promoting it much. So I was just for the phase of creating the idea and the whole instrument. But I'm proud that it's also a Polish company, which is very successful on the global market, working together with Fedco USA and selling a lot of those machines. And this machine is actually using cold water, so it's not a room temperature water, and is extracting the cold brew in 1 hour. So it's allowing us to super fasten the process. And why is it important? I will tell you a little more in the next few slides. But let's start from the beginning. So how to make the best cold brew? We all want to have the best cold brew. We want to win on the market. But we need to start somewhere, and the beginning is always the same. So we need to start, just like in all the brewing cases, despite the methods used, we need to start the journey with the raw material, which is coffee. So we need to source the coffee. The right coffee beans will give you the expected results. I'm telling right coffee beans because I'm following the new definition or the new approach to what specialty is. We have the standard for specialty. We have the CQI guidelines for what is specialty. But SCA recently has developed the CVA, Coffee Value Assessment, which is better addressing this, I wouldn't say dilemma, but a kind of a decision-making on what is good, on what is bad, what's the optimal for us. So this new definition by Specialty Coffee Association of specialty could be a solution here, where some markets are defining quality through their lenses, and we need to respect that. So that means that what we define in Europe as high quality may not be necessarily recognized by you guys in India as high quality. You may have different preference. And who are we to tell you that ours is specialty and yours is not, right? So we have to be respectful, and we have to allow for that differences, and that will actually allow us to understand the markets better. So our last activity in here is the tasting session, and I'm very curious on what you will like and dislike, and how will you be addressing your preferences. If we have the beans, the beans that are designed for our market, that are fitting in our needs, then of course we need to roast them. So the coffee needs to be roasted before it can be extracted. Simple as that, right? It sounds very trivial, but it needs to be mentioned. Roasting by some is considered as a magical process. I'm quoting the Gerhard Jensen from Probat, who was many years ago, who wrote the book about coffee roasting, and he mentioned that it's a magical process in there, even in a title. Because the roasting is a process of transforming something that is uninteresting, the grains, into jewels. So there's a magical ingredient in there. Because from something that doesn't taste like anything pleasant, you eventually have something that is tasting amazingly. We still don't know much about roasting, and I have to admit it. You know, there's no people on the planet who are coming and saying that they know everything about roasting, because we don't. There's not enough literature. There's not enough scientific studies, so we can only guess. And what we usually do, we follow our instincts and we follow our preparation as a sensory experts. So if we know what's good, then we can apply some changes and experiment by ourselves. For this, of course, we need a proper methodology and to follow the proper scientific approach. So we're kind of scientists in our own labs, a little bit with roasting. It is less explored than brewing, for sure. We may argue, why is that? The margins probably are much higher in the brewed coffee than in the roasted coffee, so the roastery don't have the money to support any scientific research. But at least we get some instructions from cold brew technology producers. So we had this study, and Marco and Hartank, and they're helpful in delivering some guidelines on how to roast the coffee for cold brew. So Marco is recommending what says on the slide. So they're recommending a medium to dark roast with profiles for profiles creamy, chocolate, and caramel overtones, and we recommend action scale of 55 to 60. So they're defining the color. For fruitier, more acidic coffees like Ethiopian, we recommend lighter colors of 60 to 65. So on the picture, you can see the 60 to 65. Not much, right? not much of the guidelines, like what's the profile, what's the charging temperature, what's the equipment that we should be using, is it fluid bed or is it drum roaster, what is it? What's the roasting time? We don't know much. We know a little more from the guys from Hard Tank who brought us a little more of their experience because they've been testing. They've been asking themselves, what is their optimal levels of roasting? And this is what they discovered, but it only applies to their extracting method. So we may try it in Toddy or with Marco, but this is designed for the Hard Tank. So again, to know more, we need to explore more, we need to experiment more. In the Hard Tank case, they go beyond the color. They're keeping the same references because they're just obvious, right? 60 to 65, 50 to 55, whatever. If you want to go darker, then you will be more chocolatey, nutty. If you want to go lighter, then you'll be more fruity. Same story, but they also declare that the mild phase of the roasting should be extended a little bit. The development should be longer than in the regular filter roasts because the coffee will behave differently in the cold brewing process. So their profiles, if you look at them very closely, you will see that the curves are quite flat at the end. They're just going almost staling at the end, almost baking at the end, but it's not baking, it's always the ROI is always positive. We will be able to see on the next slide that this rule of thumb is not working for everything, and we have different approaches and different methods. I came across, doing some research to prepare for this presentation, I came across the article published at MDPI, which I find more fun article than scientific article, although it's bringing in some insights, some information. And the authors that I put in here, so you can Google that. If not, then after the presentation, I can share the link with you. They're asking about the challenges for the cold brewing coffee, roasting, extraction, flavor profile. So I'm going to quote them a little bit as one point of view, as one perspective. So predominant factors, according to them, influencing cold brew flavor are the roast level. By this, I understand they're talking about the color. They're trying to recommend avoiding excessively dark roasting. Just like with every other brewing method, we're trying to avoid excessively dark roasting, although the market is quite used to it. But with the cold brews and the revolution, the specialty revolution or the high quality coffee revolution, we're trying to educate people to drink lighter roasts, not too light, not necessarily the Scandinavian style, but lighter than what we've been used to with the lower qualities. Because you know that if you roast lower qualities to the same dark level, they will just lose all their imperfections and they will just taste burnt. And they will need, obviously, sugar and sweeteners of any kind or milk to balance it so to taste better. So if we're talking about high quality coffees, we don't need to do that. We need to just explore the full potential that the coffees have. The cold brew is the fastest roast. So as you see, they're stating in the opposition to what Hard Tank people were stating. So they're assuming that the roast should be the fastest in the time with more rapid arrival at phase 3. So totally opposite to what the Hard Tank was declaring. So as you see, we have no consensus here. So I'm sorry to tell you that, doing the research here and there, I'm not able to bring you any solid data. You just need to explore. You need to do your own exploration of the topic. What about grinding? So again, Marco is recommending some grinding. So it's recommending that it's ground to a certain level. Grinding is another very important stage in the quest of extracting coffee. So the general rule of thumb is that coffee is to have short contact with time, should be ground finer, while it's designed to have a longer contact with water, should be ground coarser. That's the general rule. It is important to remember that grinding will depend on the coffee used. This is something that we often forget. And if we specify our grind size and we keep the number on the grinder, we tend to think that this is a universal truth. Depending on what coffee you will put in the grinder, you may have different results in the grind size. Why is that? Because grinders are not really cutting the beans in little pieces, but they're squeezing, they're smashing them. So if the coffee bean is of a different density, is of a different moisture content, it will squish differently. It will become a dust. So it will create smaller particles that will extract differently than the larger particles. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. So while Marco is suggesting 900 to 1,000 microns as the optimum for the technique, so quite coarse grounds, the hard tank people are asking for a much finer grind, which is 450 to 500 microns. This is due to their technology. If you would look again at the hard tank, the machine that is extracting coffee in 1 hour, it has the sieve where the coffee is put in, and then to separate it, the hard tank technology is using the small particles, small grinds, as a natural filter. So they're actually clogging the sieves and making it more precise in filtering coffee. So that's why they like the more finer grounds. And if we go back to the general rule of thumb, the extraction is shorter than the Todi or Marco, so the finer grind is also okay because the contact is shorter, contact with water is shorter. And now the extraction. So we have a couple of the recipes, and we go through with the first one. So here we will go through some recipes for the cold brew. So every machine comes with the manual and dedicated training, but if we want to experiment, these tips might be helpful. So the Marco is recommending 1.6 kilo of ground coffee with 10.5 liters of water. So that's the ratio, coffee to water ratio. Time of brewing is 3 hours. Medium roast profile, as they were suggesting, the microns of 900 to 1,000. And then it will create the extract of 4% TDS. So it's double the amount of total dissolved solids as a usual espresso, which then needs to be diluted. So we use the bypass, so we add the water to meet the required taste. So again, you will need to experiment with how much water do you want to add for the dilution or not, and what's your final destination. The German scientists who wrote the paper, they're suggesting to use 80 grams of coffee for 1 liter of water. So if you remember the traditional coffee rule of thumb extraction, so 60 grams per 1 liter, in here there's much more of the coffee. So 80 grams per 1 liter at the temperature of the 15 degrees Celsius, so that's a room temperature, cold room temperature, let's say. And that's, according to them, the optimum extraction will be reached in 2 hours. So if you look closer to their paper, they're saying that there is no point in extracting for longer than 2 hours. So 4 hours or 24 hours, 12 hours, but it's just them, right? You are the ones who are gonna decide what's your optimal taste. But we need to include a couple of more information that we found recently. So there was another study conducted by SCA-driven scientists. The author is Dr. Mackenzie Batali. She was sharing the results of the controlled and systematic study, which was exploring the impact of the cold brew process on sensory profile of the beverages that it was produced. The paper was published at the SCA website For your convenience, there is a QR code. If you want to download it, it takes you directly to it. In these articles, we can find results of studies about making different extractions with the use of toddy cold brewer. So we're back to the first bucket technique. So how the experiment was made. So it was in a controlled environment, coffee grounds, fresh coffee, water, stirring, measuring the TDS, then extracting through the dripper, and repetition in different conditions. So one parameter that was the controlled parameter. So the experiment was designed to determine the optimal conditions of cold coffee extracting compared to the same process with the hot water. So the aim was to extract it with hot water. Number 3 on the right-hand side, if you can see, it was 1 hour, 92 degrees Celsius. It was the last approach, and the other two were the comparison to see what the results are. The extraction was always terminated when the beverage have reached their TDS equilibrium. There was no significant difference in flavor when batch was extracted at 4 degrees or 22 degrees Celsius. Yet the conclusion can lead us into a challenging territory that we'll explore a little more. So just to recap really quickly on this study, the author is suggesting that there is no difference in the flavor composition of the brew that was done in the cold environment and in the room temperature of 22 degrees Celsius. So the suggestion is, why to bother? If you can do something in 12 hours, why to bother and do it in 36 hours in the cold environment? So that's the outcomes of this research. But the challenging territory is coming. So what are the challenges? The shelf life, the microbial growth, water and sanitization. Because with the cold brew, we're not really aware that if we're doing it in our home conditions, we're kind of creating a bump. And we need to be really careful for the bomb not to explode. So going back to the quoted studies of our German friends, the cold brew should be made fresh every day. This is the shelf life topic addressing. So for many of us, you know, if the cold brew is done in 12 hours, 24 hours, so we need to start the process over and over to keep the shelf life of 1 day. Otherwise, the raised acidity and greater ethanol content also decreases in the sugar content if the coffee is stored without proper conditions. Products will also go rancid and stale due to the oxidation process. It's normal. If there's oil and there's oxygen, it's a normal process. Having the coffee that is good for 1 day only, this doesn't sound interesting to big industry at all, right? Who wants to do that? Who wants to make one day shelf life fresh product and distribute it and have the logistics covered? So there needs to be the ways to extend the shelf life. Otherwise, we also need to ask ourselves, is the cold brew safe? What's the deal in here? So we have, fortunately, and I also I'm sharing the link, the QR code here for you, to the NCA webpage, the National Coffee Association, which is defining cold brew as perfectly safe when prepared, stored, and served properly. So we need to be just aware and provide the practices that are required in order to have a proper product and not the bomb that will potentially kill us. However, food safety and complying with local, state, and federal health regulations is not an area suited to guesswork. It is the responsibility of any food service establishment to understand the risk associated with mishandled food and the steps necessary to mitigate those risks. Simple as that, right? If you want some product that is safe to your customers, to yourself, then you just need to follow the regulations that are usually locally driven, But there are some global ideas, a global concept that we should not discuss with because they're science. So the science says that the cold brew has a pH value greater than 4.6. So it's acidic, but not that really high acidity, right? One key factor that makes cold brew production vulnerable to microbial contamination is its acidity. Coffee is an acidic substance, with cold brew typically having a pH in the range of 4.85 to 5.10. That's the usual standard that we're exploring. While this range is not conducive to growth of many harmful bacteria, but microbial growth can multiply during brewing and storage. So there's a couple of more parameters, knowing that the pH is not that low to secure the product. The potential for microbial growth is compounded by the nature of the cold brew extraction process. Because cold brew coffee is made using cold water and steeped for an extended time, there is a possibility that microorganisms present on the coffee grounds or in the water can multiply over this duration. Simple, makes sense, right? Brewing, storing, and serving cold brew at the correct temperatures is another significant factor for cold brew. So the danger zone for the cold brew, which spans from temperatures between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius, which is the optimal conditions for the microbial activity, is critical range in which harmful microorganisms can rapidly proliferate in food, potentially causing foodborne illness. Knowing this, food safety officials in the US are suggesting, or sooner than later, they will probably make it a law, that the cold brewed method should not exceed at any stage the 4 degrees Celsius. So we can already have a flashback to the studies where the coffee was brewed, extracted in 22 degrees. This will not happen by the law. It will not be the option because of the risk of the microbial growth. So, well, in fact, actually, there is some recommendation already, like British Columbia Center for Disease Control is suggesting to keep cold brew refrigerated in no more than 4 degrees Celsius for not longer than 10 days. It's not, it's suggestion again, but it's pretty soon to become a law where you will not be able, or you will be controlled to, or put it in the HACCP standards for your production. They're specifying the shelf life and the storage conditions. To extend the shelf lives, some additional actions can be taken. So the pasteurization is one of the steps, right? But we know that this may lead to change in the flavor profile. We know from different studies that applying heat to brewed coffee will create a transformation of the acids within that coffee. So we'll have the breakdown of the chlorogenic acid to caffeic and quinic, which will affect the taste eventually. If we can control that, and if we're aware of that, then we're good with the pasteurization. Another solution is the reduction of the pH, so adding acids. And this is what is commonly done. The best acid to add to the cold brew is lactic acid to lower down the pH below the 4.6, or so it will be more resistant to the microbes. Preservatives can also be added, but as we know, the coffee, the specialty coffee market is looking for the organic products, so they're not really welcoming much of the preservatives, much of the chemicals that we add to the product. So we need to look for some other solutions. My advice to mitigate the risk of the microbial growth, which is potentially killing to human, is to keep the sanitary standards very high, especially with the water that is not boiled. And talking about water. So the water needs to be treated. as in many cafes or places where we extract coffee, we are aware that the water is really important. This picture is coming from my lab, actually, so I took it and put it in here, so I can tell you all about those pipes, what is what. The most important pipe is in the left upper corner, which is the UV lamp. The UV lamp is disinfecting the water, the cold water, that will be then later filtered through the different filters, reverse osmosis, all the filters provided by BWT in this case. But going back to the sanitization and the control over the sanitary parameters, insufficient cleaning and sanitization, the human factor in here can lead to creation of microorganisms that are harmful to humans. Large producers and co-packing facilities, they must comply with regulations and obtain necessary certifications. So it's much safer to drink the products that are coming from the big industry than homemade cold brews from a local cafes. That's on an off-site comment, although I'm supporting the local cafes very much, because there's regulations that they need to follow. Water treatment is mandatory in production of cold brew. It is not only to assure the proper and controlled parameters for the extraction. As we know, in coffee extraction, it's 4% TDS, so only 4% coffee, the 96 is water, so water is kind of important. The difference between cold brew and traditional coffee is that the second one, we use coffee at the temperature which allows to mitigate the risk, because we boil the water, right? So we kill the bacteria. In cold brew, we don't boil the water. So we can use the UV lamps, we can go for the use of ozons, we can look for other solutions, but the filtration that we should approach in the cold water should be similar to the approach that is used by the big soda companies. Like if you know that the Coca-Cola is served in some place, somehow they need to treat the water that is mixed with the concentrate of Coca-Cola. So following their lead in here is much better than following the lead of the industry that is using the hot boiling water. To preserve, we know, we've already learned that if we want to extend the shelf life of the products, we need to somehow separate it from the pathogens and oxygen. So the best option is to keep it under pressure in anaerobic environment, right? To get out the oxygen, keep the pressure of nitrogen, which is working the best in this case because it's quite neutral to the taste. So kegs flushed with nitrogen are one possibility, but also bottled or canned storage is an option. More and more popular. This kind of storage will not prevent the microbial growth if we are not following the rules and the restrictions of the sanitary. But it will prevent from staling, so the oxidation will not happen. You can come across a wide range of commercially available cold brew coffees. We will have some to taste in a second. Some are pure, but some are also flavored. The cold brew gives us the potential of creating the functional beverages, something that is trendy, especially in the gyms, in the health aspects, and so on, which is different tasting, where the cold brew coffee is the base. So we can find beverages containing oat milk, all kinds of sweeteners, sugars, all kinds of aromas, tannins, alpha GPC, MCT oil, reishi mushrooms, cordyceps, taurine, ginseng, all kinds of vitamins, collagen, peptides, everything. You can add everything as long as you mix it in the right proportions and offer it to the public. And this is what we will see more and more happen. The list can be very long, and combinations unlimited. So now it's the time to test. So we're going to be tasting some of the coffees. Can I have my assistant distribute the cups? Guys. Let me tell you what we will do. In front of you, we have the forms from CVA. It's one part of the form. The coffee organizers have provided us with 3 coffees available in India. I also brought 2 from Poland because I'm curious of what's your taste profiles, which ones you will like more. So before you start tasting, now the volunteers are distributing the cups. On each cup you have a number. I will show you the numbers of the coffees in a second. But maybe I will show you later after you try, so you will not be influenced by the names. Maybe you know the brands. We will taste them only to your preference. So we're looking for your preference only. We don't want you to describe the coffees. So it's not the descriptive part. So as you know, let me explain quickly the CVA, the little sheet of a form that you have in front of you. The CVA is the new standard, new protocol from Specialty Coffee Association for discovering the potential of the coffees. It is called Coffee Value Assessment, and it's composed out of a couple of parts. One part is the physical inspection, so looking for the defects of the coffee when it's still green. Then, of course, protocol for roasting and tasting. And then something that is important to the coffee value, which is the extrinsic parameters. So where's the coffee coming from, what kind of standards, what kind of certificates it has, what are the other extrinsic attributes that the coffee possesses, and how they impact the value of it. And then we have the last part, which is a part of description, where we focus on describing what we're experiencing. And the last, which is our hedonic impression of how we like the coffee. And this is what I want you to focus on. So while using this scale, please ask yourself, how pleasant do you perceive each attribute? There's no shame of any kind. If you like something that the others don't like, who cares? It's your opinion. It's your hedonic scale. Use it as affective. The name affective is coming from your affection, your emotions. So how positive the emotions are. So we're using this scale from 1 extremely low to 9 extremely high. So actually this kind of assessment can tell us a lot about the preferences, the local preferences, which we should care about, right? This is something that we should be looking for, and this should set us in a direction of developing the product in the future. So the coffees are being distributed. I see that you have already 3 cups in front of you. In the form, you have the attributes. So you have the fragrance and aroma. You have the flavor. You have the aftertaste. You have acidity, body. Body is called mouthfeel. It's a little different definition, which is much smarter. So each of these attributes can be separately assessed by you, and you may be happy with the flavor but unhappy with the aftertaste, and this you can reflect on the scale from 1 to 9. Don't be afraid of using 9s. If you love the coffee, you have the right to have it. So I'm going to give you a few minutes just to try it, and then I'm going to come back with the slides showing what you've been tasting, okay? So thank you very much for your attention, and let's have some tasting. evaluating 3 samples because this is as much as it fits on the sheet. You were supposed to get 2 sheets, but there's more people than we expected, so I'm sorry for that. So please use the free space. And there's some questions coming up. So let us finish the practical part. Let's do the little ranking of your favorite coffees, and then I will take your questions, okay? So are all coffees on the table? Everyone had 5 cups? Not yet, okay. Just a few more minutes. Okay. All the coffees is out, right? Is there anyone who didn't have 5 cups? Please raise your hand. Okay. 1 cup is missing here. Which number? Tell them. Number 1. Number 1 is missing. Okay. Okay, but I believe that we can start doing the ranking. Before I show you the origin of these coffees, I will ask you who likes coffee number 1 the most. Their hand up. Okay, I see some. Okay, what about number 2? Okay, couple of hands up. Number 3? Oh, there's more. Okay. Number 4? Almost no one. Okay. Okay. Number 5? Okay, we have the consensus, right? Okay. Can I ask you to put back my computer on? Can I have my presentation back, gentlemen? Okay, so here's the open cards. So the first three are the local coffees. Bonomi Classic Cold Brew, Blue Tokai Classic Cold Brew Light, Alt Coffee Black and Bold. And then the last two are the ones that I brought from Poland. So obviously you didn't like the Brazil, which is like the main product sold on most of the gas stations and is very popular and selling pretty well. But most of you liked something that is the most expensive, unfortunately. You have a good taste, which is a very expensive taste, which is the Panama Geisha made in the hard tank technology. So at least we have the consensus, the worldwide consensus, that what's the best, what's the taste profile that we're looking for. And I'm happy for it, because that's also a little marketing research that we've done in here. So that tells us that the coffees that we appreciate in Europe, they may have their homes also in India. So I'm looking forward to bringing more and more of that flavor profiles and taste profiles. Thank you very much. I will be taking your questions now. I just want to share with you one tip that I forgot to mention intentionally, because I wanted you to be scared of the potential risks of making your own cold brew, because it's really a responsible thing to actually be responsible for your customers and for your family, for yourselves. And you need to be aware that this way of extracting coffee is potentially hazardous. Many of the cafes in US or in Europe, they're making their cold brew in a safe way. So they're making sure that their water is safe. So they usually use mineral water from the plastic bottles and mix it with instant coffee, instead of taking the risk of contaminating with the bacteria on the bean. In the process, they're just playing safe and having very good results. So that's potentially one of the solutions. There you go, you like it. I also like this idea, although there's room for improvement in the instant coffee market as well. If we'll make them taste like this number 5, then I'll be happy, okay? So, there's been 2 questions already asked about the functional beverages, about the extraction. There's a lot to explore. You need to be aware that if you add ingredients for the functional beverages to the cold water, you will have different results than if you add the same ingredients to the hot water. You know, there's physical and enzymatical changes that are happening due to the application of the heat. So you just need to be aware that some of the functional ingredients that you will add and heat it up, you may end up having different results that you were expecting, flavor-wise or healthy-wise as well. As you know, some products are safe for you when they're cold, and some of them are not safe when they're hot or cold, whatever. Some of them needs to be boiled, some of them needs to be frozen before they're being served. So, you know, there's enzymatic science and physical science behind this that we need to be aware of. So experimenting, okay, but not too much, okay? Not too much of the exploration, because it can end up really bad. The other question was about the use of Robusta. I'm looking forward to having the Robusta cold brew. I'm super curious about the fine Robusta, so high quality Robusta. We have, thanks to the CQI, we have the standards for calling what is the quality Robusta. And we have that direction in the world. India is famous for the Robusta. It was always famous. I've been a judge in the Flavor of India for many years. And I remember from the competition that Arabicas were not that exciting as the Robustas from India. So there's a huge potential. And with the climate changes that are happening, the Robusta will be more and more present, although it needs to be addressed just like with the instant coffees. The quality needs to be improved so it can be more widely used. So I'm looking forward to the Robusta and the cold brew with obviously more caffeine content and different flavor profiles. And again, if we're fighting for the flavor profiles, most of it will start with the bean. So if we have a harsh coffee tasting, we will not reduce that harsh coffee tasting into the cold brew. It will just dissolve, because these are the aromatic compounds that are the nature of the coffee. So simple as that. Improve the coffee, then you will have the better results in the cold brew. Do I have any other questions? Any other questions? Yes, please. Here. Yeah, okay, thank you for the question. So the question is, if we have the mixed temperature brew, so we start with the hot water to bloom the coffee and then we continue with the cold water, will that mitigate the risk of the microbial activity? Not necessarily, because some of the microbes can be in that cold water. So these microbes will multiply. So that's not the solution. Maybe it will reduce some of the bacteria that are on the surface of the beans, which can be helpful a little bit. But then again, we need to be 100% sure that the environment that we're working in is clean. So if you want to reduce or mitigate the risk, first start with the human factor and assure that you're working in a very sterile, clean environment, just like in the surgery room. Right, before the surgery, you put the UV lamps on, you clean everything, disinfect, wash hands, use gloves, use the face masks, because all the bacteria is coming in, and that may potentially create the risk. The risk is lower when you will consume the product sooner, right? And if you will be storing it, keeping it in the controlled environment, cooler environment, below 4 degrees Celsius. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question over there. Let's wait for the microphone. So it's not only me using the microphone today. The voice sounds weird, so.
Hi, Philip. You spoke about the 3 equipments of toddy, hard tank, and macro. Have you done any work, or have you been able to do on beacon?
Nope.
Okay, because there's one exhibited here, beacon in the exhibition.
Amazing.
Yeah, and they speak about cold brew in 20 minutes. So I just wanted some information on that.
Once again, I didn't understand.
There's an equipment by name Beacon.
Okay.
That's BKON.
Okay.
Okay. The cold brew is done in 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
All right, that's some novelty.
Here. Okay.
Well, that shows that I'm not prepared for this, you know. But I'm happy. You know, you see the exponential growth of the industry. It's beautiful, and I'm super curious. I want to go and see it. Yes. If it's 20 minutes, why not?
It is exhibited in copy machines.
Is it using cold water?
Yeah, cold water.
The water is room temperature, or is it cold?
I am not very sure about that.
Okay, because from this presentation, you should be aware that the standards that are being introduced as a law pretty soon, maybe not all everywhere, but for sure in those companies that are following the very strict rules, big industries, they will not be interested in something that is higher the temperature of the 4 degrees Celsius. So they will be looking for the solutions that is 4 degrees Celsius and below.
Yeah, after your presentation, probably I'll have to go back and check whether it's 4 degrees or below. Also.
Well,
yeah.
I believe that all of us interested in cold brew will go and check it out. If not today, then tomorrow. Okay.
Hi, Philip. So my question is, like, how does the duration of brewing affect caffeine content in the brewed coffee?
Okay, caffeine is washed away. The process of washing out the caffeine from the bean. Oh, there's a word in English for this. I don't have it now. You know it? Okay, never mind. The science behind examining the extraction of the caffeine showed that the caffeine in the cold brew is extracting up to 7 hours, or 5 to 7 hours. This is the maximum. Then later there is no sense. So the longer you extract to that extent, you will have more caffeine content in your brew. So it will be compromised with the flavors, right? Because some of the flavor compounds and the enzymatic changes that are happening over that long extended period of time, plus the bitterness from the caffeine, they will impact your final product. But if the caffeine is something that you're looking for, then going up to that 7 hours at the maximum, I guess, I would have to check, but this is it. And then later doesn't make any sense because no more caffeine is being washed out. It's called leaching. This is, so leached out.
Hi, Philip. So my question is, now the taste notes that come on the coffee beans bag usually are according to the cupping standard, right? But cupping is done in hot water now. So when we have cold brew, do we expect the same taste notes, or is there a different standard of cold brew cupping maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. That question is actually taking us in a direction of defining what is the quality that we're looking for. Some of the coffees that are famous for the flavor profile, that are sold for extra price, will not behave well as a cold brew. And some coffees that are treated just like regular coffee, so never mind, they may have a beautiful result as a cold brew. We don't know that, but we have to assume that it's possible. This is possible, and we just need to be open-minded. The key thing in here is the knowledge of what is good and what is bad. From observing how you reacted to the coffees that we had on the table, I'm quite confident that we all know what the high quality is, where we want to be aiming at. So, of course, the education, the sensory education is the key. With everything, roasting and then brewing, and then understanding the basics and applying your methodology and discovering some new lands. This is what we need to be doing.
Thank you.
We have a question here.
So you have been speaking about the extraction parameters for the cold brew. So, but nothing is been told about the pressure that is been required during the extraction process.
The pressure in the extracting process. Oh, okay. So again, the extraction, brewing is the extraction. I repeated it a couple of times. I even recapped it. So what we want to do, we want to extract. We want to dissolve the solids. We want to dissolve the oils. We want to extract them out from the beans. And whatever doesn't extract, to get it out. This is what we see as a coffee cake at the espresso, right? All the leftovers or the grounds on the bottom of the cup. The pressurized method is allowing us to extract it a little differently. So the pressure applied to the water, with the water to the puck of coffee is extracting differently. As you see, the espresso is extracted within 25-30 seconds. So that's a pretty fast extraction. And that's why it's called espresso, right? They wanted to extract, they wanted to have quick coffee. So let's apply some different methods to extract faster. So that's the reason for it. So the oils under pressure are being extracted faster, and the volatile compounds with the flavor profiles are being extracted under the pressure faster. That's it. That's the answer to your question. There's a different ways of approaching the same used by the hard tank. As you remember, I mentioned that they're using the turbulence. It's inducted turbulence for extracting the coffee. So in the basket of the coffee, surrounded by the water, so that's immersion brew, the water is in the turbulence, so like a little jacuzzi, like if you would put bubbles of the air. So this turbulence is actually making the particles of coffee move and extract faster. So this is one of the ways that you can actually apply to extract faster.
So, and I have another question for you. Like you were talking about this fermented yeast and malts. So like after cold brew extraction, whether these yeast and malts will create another taste profiles after it's been extracted during the process? I just wanted to know, like, there is a presence of yeast and malts after the cold brew is being extracted. So, yeast, yeast or another bacteria. So whether these will create any positive taste profiles after cold brew that has been happened. Um, is it beneficial?
Okay, so the question is about the yeast or bacteria that are present in the process of the extraction of the cold brew. My intuition would tell me that this is not something good that we want because we have no control over it. We don't know. It's spontaneous. And since we don't have control, how are we going to replicate or how are we going to control it not to get loose and eat us all, you know? It's eating sugars, right? And this is actually in the study of the German scientists that I was quoting here. They showed that the longer exposition is making this bacteria to process on the sugars that are being present in the brew, in the extract. So they're consuming the sugars, creating some alcohol as a byproduct, but anyway, changing the profile. Is it better? I don't know. Usually we tend to say that it's not, because we as humans, we like sweet products. This is why we add sugar to coffee, to tea. This is why we eat cakes. Look at the animals. They don't go for sweets. Like if you give a pastry to the dog will not eat it because the dogs or cats, they don't have that sweet taste buds. So us humans, we like sweet. So having the bacteria to compete over the sugars in the brew is not something that I would want to put in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question in here. Wait, 2 minutes. Okay, so let's make it a last question, and if there will be some super trendy topics, then I will be happy to take it afterwards. Okay, please.
Considering your expertise in sensory evaluation, if you wanted two types of opposing notes in a cold brew, for example, a medium roast or a dark roast, chocolatey, more nutty roast, and a more light roast, which is more fruity and very acidic. Should there be a difference if you make a blend in the ground form, or like will you extract them differently and then blend the cold brews? So basically, if I take two roasts and if I make a blend of them in the ground form and then I cold brew, or should I take the cold brew differently of the roast? Would there be any difference considering the extraction processes also will be affected by the other compounds and the time will it take?
Okay. I hear your question, and there's no simple answer to that, but I love the spirit, because this is the spirit of exploring the potential. What if we mix the two roasts and make a cold brew? Is it going to be better than if we cold brew one and cold brew another and then mix the final product? I don't know. I have no idea. Let's experiment. Let's see what happens if you pre-blend or if you blend afterwards. This is one of the options. The universal truth, as far as we know, is the dark roast, although it's favored by many, doesn't necessarily go well with all the high-quality coffees. Some coffees like to be roasted dark, but some coffees just hate it. So no matter what you do, how blends you create, you will not end up having brilliant results. But I'm very open to it, and I'm looking forward to try it.
It's just that in my experience as a home brewer, all the notes that are written on the packet of the coffee, it's not necessary that by any particular brewing method you will get all the notes. For example, as an espresso, it might be a bit bitter, and as a pour over, it might be a bit sweeter. So the idea of combining them is a better idea to sell it as a more complex drink by using simple beans.
Well, that shows that you trust very well into what's written on the bag. You know, I wouldn't trust that 100%.
It's not
I would
about
I would follow my own instincts.
No, it's just that I first, whenever I get a bag of beans, I brew by all the methods accessible to me, and then I note down what did I get, and it really differs from brewing method to brewing method.
But trust me, these discussions we keep having on and on all the time. Like, there is no holy grail for this. I will not give you the answers. I can design the experiment that we can conduct and look for the answers, but I will not guarantee finding the right answers. But if we know what the quality is, if we want to follow the quality, then why not explore it and to just go for it?
I get your point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Once again, a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to Mr. Bartlett. I request Ms. Komal Sable, South India Coffee Company, the founder of South India Coffee Company, to kindly present a token of our gratitude to Mr. Bartlett. The shawl happens to be the traditional Indian way of honoring special guests. Thank you for your valuable time and inputs. Thank you for being here. So there is a cultural event this evening that begins at 6. Students from a school from Mudbidre are performing. Students as young as 10 years old. So they are a nationally very well-known troupe who perform in various places all over India. And they will be showcasing the entire culture of India. So please stay back and do be part of this show. Thank you.